in Malaysia, Indonesia, and the Philippines. So that's a 13,500-mile wide arc of jihad, and it's important to keep our eyes on it and not lose sight of it.
What do you think President Putin would do if he felt that the threat from ISIS or any other Muslim or Islamic organization was getting stronger within the Soviet Union?
Well, he would do what he did in Chechnya. In Chechnya, he practically wiped out the capital city. The Chechen War was so intense that it broke the back of the Soviet state at one point. But he'd have to go military. Now, he's tried to let us know that we share a common goal, getting rid of this jihadism. It threatens him, it threatens us. Mm-hmm. But we have rebuffed him time after time, and we have, for some perverse reason, chosen to regard his jihadists as simply separatists, as nationalists, as people who want their territory back. That's not what they want. They want a caliphate. They want a one-world government under a single caliph, a world that is entirely Muslim, in which non-Muslims are either dhimmi, second-class citizens, or are killed because they stand as an obstacle in the way of saving the souls of those who can be turned to Islam. They stand in the way of paradise, of a perpetual paradise for people if they will only turn to Islam, and that means that profane leaders, they call them, infidel leaders, non-believers in Islam, those leaders are leading hundreds of millions of people down the primrose path to hell, and hell is permanent and intense, and you'd never want to be there in a million years.
What's going on with Iran? We haven't heard about Iran in a while. It's kind of sitting in the upper decks of the theater, so to speak.
Well, Iran is, you put your finger on one of the major operatives in all of this. Remember that Hezbollah to the north of Israel in Lebanon and Hamas to the south of Israel are both Iranian proxy armies. One, Hamas, was actually founded by the Muslim Brotherhood, but then Iran supplies it with its weapons, and Brigadier General Qasem Soleimani, who's the head of the Quds Force in Iran, which is their external expeditionary force, their foreign legion, their way of controlling proxy armies, their tool for controlling proxy armies. He claims that Hamas is part of his portfolio. So Iran is manipulating things right now, but they have a problem because the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria is anti-Shiite. It is strictly Sunni. And Iran is Shiite. So, ironically, a state that is just as militantly jihadist as Iran is wants Iran out of the way. So Iran has a problem here. But Iran continues to support Syria. It's a vital ally, continues to support Hamas, and continues to support Hezbollah, and has been very active for many, many years in manipulating things behind the scenes in Afghanistan and probably Pakistan.
Son of a gun. Today, a U.S. general was killed.
Well, that's another thing that shows us that we can't take our eyes off the arc of jihad, because that general was killed in Afghanistan. And he was killed by apparently a trusted Afghanistani soldier who had been schooled, who had been educated in military matters by the Americans. And with an automatic weapon, you know, in the United States we have the NRA, which claims that automatic weapons are not really dangerous. With an automatic weapon, he took out 14 people. He killed or wounded 14 people before he could be shot. So it's a reminder that Afghanistan is probably 1,500 miles away from Gaza. But we make a big mistake when we keep our eyes on this one tiny little strip of land. Yes, we should be concerned, as you were at the beginning of the show, about the death of every man, woman, and child on this planet. Death is fundamentally unacceptable. But we can't take our eyes off of this grand sweep of jihadism.
You know, you and I both have friends who are Muslims, and it's not every Muslim that is a terrorist. It's not every Muslim who wants war.
Well, far from it.
Exactly.
My Muslim friends and probably your Muslim friends, they look at parts of the Quran that jihadists do not look at. They look at the parts of the Quran that say to harm one innocent is the equivalent of killing 1,000 people. They look at the parts of the Quran that tell them to be respectful of people of all different religious faiths. So their Islam is not the kind of Islam we are talking about. But the problem is that according to Muslim demographers, there are between 1.5 billion and 1.8 billion Muslims on the face of planet Earth. And if only 10% of those Muslims are jihadists, that's more people than, and you've heard me give this figure before, that's more people than all of the population of Germany, France, and Britain during the Second World War. That's a very big population of jihadists that we need to be concerned about.
You know, it seems that the silent majority in the United States and Canada are starting to make waves. There's, like people are coming out and saying, listen, with Ebola, illegal aliens, and Islamic terrorism, the threat is there. What are we going to do about it? Gosh, Howard, a year ago, you'd never hear those kind of comments. But now people are starting to be afraid. They're starting to be concerned. And they're looking at the vigilantes for protection.
Well, I hate to bring good news into this conversation, but the fact is the four horsemen of the apocalypse, of those four horsemen, we have basically eradicated two. Those horsemen don't exist anymore. And the first two horsemen of the apocalypse are famine and plague. And Ebola has reached 900 people, but when a real plague hit in 1348 to 1350, the Black Death, a third of the world's population died.
Yeah.
Today, to achieve that, a virus would have to take out over 2 billion people. And that isn't happening. It's not going to happen because, again, we've eradicated one of the four horsemen of the apocalypse. We can control things medically. Even Ebola, we can't control. We don't yet have a weapon against it. We don't yet have an antibiotic against it, but we know how to isolate it, and I hope these words don't prove to be dead wrong, but I do think that we're going to continue to isolate it.
No, I was listening to the director, the head of the CDC today, and that's exactly what he said. We know how to control it.
Right, so, and as long as we're careful, in Africa they have not been careful. When people have Ebola, they're supposed to be quarantined, but there have been no official figures there to guarantee the quarantine, and the result is that families have huddled around people they love, with good reason. You and I would huddle around the people we love, too. Yeah. And they've held them as they've died, and as a consequence, they've run a great risk of infection. And that infection is not just a personal problem for them, it becomes a problem for all of the people that they then make contact with. Now, Ebola, can't be spread by aerosols. It can't be spread by the air. It has to be spread by bodily fluid, so it's not all that easy to get. Nonetheless, by doing what you and I would do, if we had a child and that child was dying of Ebola, we'd want that child to have the comfort of being in our arms, even if it was dying.
Howard,
it's very hard to...
I'm sorry, old friend, we've got to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. Howard Bloom is our guest, www.howardbloom.net. He's the author of the Muhammad Code that's available at Amazon.com. My name is Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone. Don't go away. My name is Rob McConnell, and I would like to tell you about a very special lady that I have the pleasure of knowing, and that's Miss Sylvia Anthony. Sylvia Anthony believes the golden years are a time to gear up and get busy, not relax and take it easy. She has faced many hardships in her 84 years, but they have made her stronger and more determined. As founder and president of Sylvia's Haven, a shelter for women and their children near Boston, Sylvia has helped transform over 1,086 lives in the past 27 years, not only with housing, but also providing direction as to where they can go to develop the earning skills they want and need to live free from difficult domestic situations. Sylvia's Haven is everything to Sylvia Anthony, even calling it her magnificent obsession. Women who qualify for the program at Sylvia's Haven receive assistance via guidance counselors to find the appropriate job opportunity. Women and their children may remain at the housing for up to 2 years. At the end of this time, or sooner, a woman who is successfully employed and has an apartment or home may leave Sylvia's Haven to begin a new and independent life. Now this is where you come in to help make Sylvia's dream into a reality. Sylvia's dream is to have a Sylvia's Haven in every state to help as many women and their children as she can, and to help this dream come true. A crowdfunding site has been established which can be accessed at www.sylviasdream.org. Now that's www.sylviasdream.org. With your financial help and support, Sylvia Anthony will continue to help those in their time of need, not only in the Boston area, but with her dream of having a Sylvia's Haven in every state of the United States. Your help is needed to make Sylvia's dream come true. Please visit and give at www.sylviasdream.org. Once again, www.sylviasdream.org. And remember, the only difference between a dream and reality is just doing it. We need your help to make Sylvia's dream come true. Visit www.sylviasdream.org. Once again, www.sylviasdream.org. For the X Zone Radio TV show and the X Chronicles newspaper, I am Rob McConnell.
This is the X Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Howard Bloom is my guest, www.howardbloom.net. He's also the author of, oh my gosh, how many books all told, Howard?
6. A total of 6.
A total of 6. And one book that he's written that is very relevant to what's going on in the world today is the Mohammed Code. It's available at Amazon.com. During the commercial break, Howard and I discovered something rather unique. Russian criminals steal 1.2 billion passwords. Now, here's a little bit of the story. Russian criminals have stolen 1.2 billion internet usernames and passwords, amassing what could be the largest collection of stolen digital credentials in history. And this is according to a respected security firm. The news was first reported by the New York Times, which cited research from Milwaukee-based Hold Security. The firm didn't reveal the identities of the targeted websites, citing non-disclosure agreements and a desire to prevent existing vulnerabilities from being more widely exploited. Hold Security founder Alex Hold told CNN Money that the trove includes credentials gathered from over 420,000 websites, both similar sites as well as household names. The criminals didn't breach any major email providers, though, he said. Holden said the gang makes its money by sending out spam for bogus products like weight loss pills, and had apparently amassed its collection of digital credentials for that relatively innocuous purpose. So there you go. Plus, Howard, did you know that the European Central Bank was also hacked?
That's amazing. Well, one thing to keep your eye on in all of this, first of all, that was a Russian gang. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I mentioned when we were off air, this may sound ridiculously optimistic, but in the old days, to pull off a heist of this scale, you'd have to break into a bank with 6 guys with guns, and you'd end up killing a bunch of people. That was in the 19th century. Bank robberies were accompanied by a lot of murders.
Yep.
Well, this was a heist that goes far beyond the robbing of any little country bank somewhere out in the Wild West, far, far beyond it, and yet no one was killed. And there's a basic fact, and that is that much as we think our culture is the most violent culture in the history of the world, it's not. And the factor, your odds of dying a violent death at the hands of a fellow human being are close to 1/10 what they would have been in 1650 A.D. or what they would have been in a primitive tribe, one of those tribes that supposedly lives at peace with nature and at peace with the world. So this is an indication of the extent to which criminality is bad. It's horrid, but nobody was killed. And So that's a step forward. But in the killing department, what we really have to watch out for, aside from Gaza and Boko Haram, we really need to keep our eye on Boko Haram and the Islamic State.